Late at night, Yeon Yisol was seen staring at her phone while lying on her bed. As her fingers moved lazily across the screen, scrolling through social media, a quiet bitterness settled in her chest. It seemed to her that the people on those platforms were living inside a separate world filled with happiness, countless followers, endless chats, gossip, and all kinds of dazzling moments. Everything appeared glamorous, polished, and far removed from reality. Some viewers admired those shining everyday lives, while others were consumed by jealousy over the laughter and attention flooding their screens. As for her, she felt pathetic in a far more basic sense. She thought she was not even jealous of their popularity or beauty, but of the simple fact that they were able to participate in such things at all. They chatted freely, shared jokes, and gossiped without restraint, while those scenes remained distant stories to her. While lying idly on her bed, she found herself thinking about how she had no friends at all. If anyone had asked whether she had been unsociable since birth, but that was not the case with her. Actually, during her elementary schooling, she had been quite popular and had several friends. Until the 3rd grade, she had blended in easily and had even stood out in some ways. She had served as class president twice, and once, a boy had shyly confessed his feelings to her. He had said she was pretty, intelligent, and had a nice personality. Those memories felt unreal now, as though they belonged to someone else entirely. The Yeon Yisol, who had once lived like that, turning into a complete outcast, had a single cause. One day, someone had poured juice over her clothes during lunch and told her to eat alone from then on. A few cruel words had followed, though their exact content had blurred with time. When she tried to grab onto her friend Seong Shinu and ask why he had suddenly begun ignoring her, he had called her terrible. He had then asked for them to pretend they did not know each other and had walked away without looking back. Without being given a reason or a chance to defend herself, she had been abandoned not once but twice. From then on, her situation had worsened naturally. As the next morning she walked through the school halls carrying her books, she wondered how she should describe herself. She questioned whether she had become an invisible person or someone numb even to loneliness. For a brief moment, she thought at least she had not completely faded from existence. Then suddenly, Yeon Yisol lost in such thoughts. She bumped into a tall student. People often claimed there were reasons behind bullying. As she fell to the floor and looked up, she noticed the boy staring at her with pity, as if silently saying how unfortunate it was. In that instant, she realized she had been labeled as the problem. The boy extended his hand to help her, yet while Yeon Yisol wished someone would finally explain what she had done wrong, she chose to stand up on her own. The boy remained standing there, and as she tried to leave, he called out to her and mentioned she had dropped something. He added, with a tone of disbelief, that she was still carrying it around and questioned what she thought she was doing. Her face flushed with heat as she quickly snatched the item from his hand and muttered she had planned to throw it away that very day. Her voice betrayed her emotions as it cracked slightly. An awkward silence settled between them, growing heavier by the second. Embarrassment overwhelmed her and she ended up running away without looking back. While fleeing, she wondered why no matter how much she thought about it, she could not understand what she had done wrong. Later, while sitting alone in the corner of the library, she replayed the scene in her mind. She regretted letting him see that object, especially since it had been Seong Shinu of all people. She worried he might believe she still harbored feelings for him, which felt unbearably humiliating. After being ignored by nearly the entire school and becoming the subject of countless absurd rumors, she had somehow survived those nightmarish elementary school years. It had been during that time she had met Seong Shinu. Back then, while she studied alone in the library, Seong Shinu had approached her. He had introduced himself as a transfer student who had just joined class 3 and mentioned his poor grades. He had asked whether she could help him study. During the summer of her first year in middle school, a short, shady-looking boy with cropped hair had become the only person who spoke to her regularly. Though he had once seemed reserved, he had gradually opened up. His smile had been gentle, even if his academic skills were lacking. From time to time, he had given her small gifts, which had warmed her heart. He had been her first love, and more importantly, a close friend. Everything had changed during the harsh winter of their second year. Without offering an explanation, he had cut her off as casually as discarding trash. The memory still stung. Pulled back into the present, 2 students standing behind Seong Shinu, whispering among themselves. They wondered aloud if she was the top student in the school. It was their first time seeing her up close, and they remarked they finally understood why the rumors existed. One asked about those rumors, while the other claimed she was famous as a so-called princess who ranked people. They said she was intelligent and came from a wealthy family, and it was rumored she did not treat others like humans if they were beneath her standards. They speculated it must have been difficult for those who had known her since elementary school to tolerate her. One of them eventually called out to Seong Shinu, drawing his attention away, while Yeon Yisol reflected on how she had gone the entire day without speaking a single word. Almost as if she were invisible, she realized she had developed a certain habit. Alongside napping, she spent time imagining things. When she activated what she called her delusion mode, her imagination knew no limits. Though she recognized how pathetic it was, nothing else helped pass time better when she was alone. Inside her fantasies, she imagined herself holding a microphone and shouting boldly in front of others, doing things she could never manage in reality. She often became lost in elaborate scenarios that would never occur in her real life. In one such fantasy, she grabbed Seong Shinu by the collar and demanded an explanation. She imagined asking what she had done wrong. She questioned whether she had spoken behind his back, hurt him, or done anything unforgivable. In her mind, she accused him of being the one who had started avoiding her like a child who had grown taller and more popular. She remembered how he had ignored all her messages during their third year of middle school and had continued ignoring her even when she had asked for a reason. She could not understand why she had been the one to look at her with disgust. Seong Shinu replied that there must be a reason why she was being hated. At times, useless fantasies interrupted her thoughts, and she admitted how frustrating it all felt. She wanted to know the reason so badly she wished she could read his mind. However, she then imagined hearing all kinds of cruel thoughts and realized she would not be able to endure them. She acknowledged her mental weakness and decided it might be easier if thoughts appeared briefly and simply. She wondered whether it would hurt less if people's opinions showed up like simple hashtags. She wished she could see just those labels and nothing more. At that moment, something unimaginable occurred. A system suddenly appeared before her eyes, congratulating her. Her mouth fell open as she questioned what was happening. The system explained that among countless wishes made unknowingly, hers had been chosen as the 1,000 quadrillionth wish. To commemorate such a rare milestone, it announced her wish would be granted. Just then, Seong Shinu entered the library and mentioned he had not realized she was there. Immediately, a new mode activated. The system added an explanation, stating that from that moment on, whenever she made eye contact with someone, their thoughts about each other would be exchanged in the form of hashtags. Seong Shinu called out to her, attempting to say something he clearly struggled to express. When their eyes met, the system declared eye contact successful and confirmed the hashtag exchange. A hashtag appeared in her vision, attached to Seong Shinu. It labeled him as her first love who had turned into trash. Overwhelmed, she silently cursed her luck, thinking she should have wished for something simpler, like winning the lottery instead. Yeon Yisol lived on the outskirts of a quiet seaside town, far from the main neighborhood. Nestled, there was a small raw fish restaurant, modest and weathered by the sea breeze, which also served as her home. When she returned that day, the familiar scent of salt and food welcomed her even before she stepped inside. She announced her arrival to her family and casually asked whether there was anything to eat. Before she could take another step, two small figures came rushing toward her. Ha-yul and Ji-yul threw their arms around her waist, clinging tightly as if she might disappear again. Ji-yul complained in a small, aggrieved voice, reminding her she had promised to pick up seashells with him and Ha-yul. Yeon Yisol apologized softly, her voice filled with guilt. Her parents, though often bitter toward each other, still managed to coexist under the same roof. Her impossibly strict older brother maintained his usual sharp demeanor, while the twins turned the house into chaos every single day. As she instinctively glanced at them, their thoughts came flooding in. She realized they were all praising her, cherishing her, and worrying about her in their own ways. Those unfiltered feelings struck her deeply, and before she could stop herself, tears welled up and spilled over. Her older brother noticed immediately and questioned why she was crying. He called out to their mother, informing her that Yeon Yisol was in tears. Their mother replied with surprise, asking whether their top student was crying again. Her eldest son reminded her she should not spoil the Yeon Yisol by calling her that, but their mother argued it was fine to indulge her a little by calling her that. Meanwhile, the twins continued clinging to her, trying their best to cheer her up. Overwhelmed by the warmth filling her chest, Yeon Yisol realized just how fortunate she was to have been born into such a family. At that moment, she genuinely believed she had gained a superpower. That night, she lay awake, still unable to accept the reality of what had happened. It all felt too unreal. Even her eyesight had improved. She had always suffered from poor vision, but now she could see clearly without her glasses. As she stared into the darkness, another question surfaced. What had she said before leaving the library? The shock had erased the details. Why had she been staring like that in the first place? Her thoughts drifted back to the library earlier that day. She remembered sitting at her desk when those strange powers had awakened. Seong Shinu had been standing in front of her, trying to say something. While he struggled to find his words, she had been distracted by the floating hashtag, desperately attempting to understand the 10,000 quadrillionth wish and the sudden exchange of thoughts. She vaguely recalled him asking what was wrong with his expression. She remembered apologizing abruptly and rushing away, claiming her stomach hurt and she needed to leave. She had pushed past him too forcefully and fled without looking back. When she finally drifted towards sleep, she wondered whether superpowers were really supposed to appear so randomly. She thought about how Spider-Man had gained his abilities from a random spider bite, and perhaps that had been acceptable, but this still felt too sudden. She clutched Ha-yul tightly in her sleep, her mind replaying the hashtag exchanged when she had made eye contact with Seong Shinu. The first love was trash. The meaning of it refused to settle clearly in her mind. Eventually, exhaustion claimed her. The next day arrived faster than expected. That morning, she noticed Seong Shinu standing at the front of the classroom holding a pen and a piece of cardboard. As she watched him, the words of the trash who was his first love echoed in her thoughts. Lost in that confusion, she accidentally bumped into someone. It turned out to be the class president. As apologies were exchanged, her gaze shifted, and she found Seong Shinu standing nearby. Their eyes met. Immediately, the familiar sensation returned and the hashtag appeared once more. The first love was trash. The repetition left her even more bewildered. She tried to steady herself, summoning her courage. She thought about how Seong Shinu had ignored her for so long, treating her as if she did not exist. She questioned whether he truly thought of her as trash. Before she could process further, a girl called out to Seong Shinu, asking whether he was ready to make the announcement and suggesting they do it together. Yeon Yisol watched the interaction quietly. A strange realization dawned on her. Perhaps she had been his first love as well. She acknowledged how quickly humans adapted to absurd situations. Even though the wish had been made impulsively, she was already starting to accept it. She was surprised by herself, knowing she could not tell anyone about this insane development. Her parents would think she was joking, her brother would likely believe she had lost her mind, and the twins were far too young. The only person she could possibly confide in was Seong Shinu himself. Her gaze followed Seong Shinu as he stepped out of the room. She thought bitterly about how he should not deceive people like that and how his current image felt like a complete joke. He acted like a smooth, popular student now, yet in middle school he had spent his days hiding in the library with her, watching movies instead of studying. As he began the announcement for the upcoming sports festival, she found it ridiculous. She remembered how he used to tremble for an entire week just to prepare for a 1-minute presentation, practicing endlessly with her by his side. As he finished his speech and wished everyone a good day, she reflected on how someone she had once been so close to had discarded her so casually. Memories resurfaced of her younger self, wondering why he had changed, questioning what she had done wrong, and believing she could fix everything if only she could talk to him. Time felt as if it were crumbling beneath her feet. Later that evening, as she walked home, she noticed how quickly time seemed to pass. Anger bubbled up inside her, and she cursed Seong Shinu under her breath, calling him a heartless bastard and accusing him of knowing nothing about loyalty. She questioned the audacity of labeling her as trash. Tears blurred her vision as she looked around, feeling the urge to scream and release everything pent up inside her. She shouted openly, declaring her hatred for Seong Shinu and cursing his name. Suddenly, a voice spoke from behind her, remarking that the speaker had been thinking the same thing and praising her outburst as impressive. Startled, she jumped aside in shock. The stranger commented casually that she had been looking around but had not seen him earlier, wondering whether he had blended into the shadows because he was dressed entirely in black. When their eyes met, the familiar sensation struck again, and the hashtag exchange activated successfully. The stranger suggested they become friends, adding that he also despised Seong Shinu. Above his head, a hashtag appeared in her vision, suspicious deep cave-like voice. Above hers, his view of her appeared just as clearly, the damn bastard's first love. Confused, she demanded to know who he was. With a grin, he replied he was her future boyfriend. Shocked by the absurd statement, she asked what he was talking about. He quickly clarified he had been joking and laughed it off, leaving her standing there, stunned and uncertain about what kind of trouble she had just stepped into. Yeon Yisol found herself wondering what kind of joke the stranger thought he was making. Confusion lingered on her face as she questioned him, starting to ask why he would say something like that. Before she could finish, the stranger calmly replied by asking whether her parents had told her about him. He mentioned they were all going to have dinner together that evening with his family. The word dinner startled her, and her expression shifted immediately. As she processed his words, a memory slowly surfaced. She recalled her parents mentioning something earlier about new neighbors who had moved in next door. They had said their son was the same age as her and had asked her to take good care of him. The details had slipped her mind entirely until now. The stranger smiled and added that the adults specifically wanted her to attend the dinner as well. Yeon Yisol finally pieced everything together and nodded, saying she remembered now. She thanked the stranger for reminding her, feeling slightly embarrassed by her forgetfulness. After a brief pause, a stranger casually asked whether she truly hated Seong Shinu as much as it seemed. As he said this, he made direct eye contact with her. Instantly, he reacted as if he had confirmed something, stating with certainty that she really did hate him. The sudden confidence in his tone made her heart skip. At that moment, a tiny, long-forgotten memory stirred within her. She recalled silver hair fluttering slightly, a strange, low voice she had never heard before, and the odd hashtag Baek Seol had attached to her while talking about Seong Shinu. Damn bastard's first love. The phrase echoed faintly in her mind. Her thoughts drifted further back to when Seong Shinu had still been her friend. Damn bastard's first love. The phrase echoed faintly in her mind. She remembered asking him once whether he really had a childhood friend he had known since birth. She had admitted feeling jealous, confessing she had always wanted a bond like that. Seong Shinu had dismissed her envy, saying there was nothing special about it since they fought constantly, and that it felt more like a curse than a blessing. She had argued that at least a friend was still a friend. Seong Shinu had bluntly replied that the guy was a total psychopath who spent all day plotting ways to kill him. The comment had shocked her, and she had reacted with disbelief. Seong Shinu had laughed it off, adding that he would make sure nothing like that happened. Still, he had warned her that if someone with long, annoying ash-gray hair and a strange low voice ever approached her, she should immediately run away. At the time, she had internally labeled that unknown person with a hashtag describing him as a suspicious, deep-voiced friend. Now, standing in front of a stranger, the realization hit her all at once. She understood that Baek Seol was the very person Seong Shinu had warned her about. As if on cue, a stranger introduced himself properly, saying his name was Baek Seol, and adding it was nice to finally meet her. Later, when they arrived at the dinner table, Baek Seol's mother was already seated with a baby in her arms, alongside the Yeon Yisol's parents. Yeon Yisol's mother commented teasingly that the two of them seemed to have grown close very quickly. Baek Seol responded smoothly, saying they simply happened to share the same interests. Yeon Yisol felt her face heat up, knowing she had no way to argue against that. Baek Seol's mother smiled warmly and remarked she must be the Yeon Yisol, mentioning she had heard a lot about her. Yeon Yisol observed her carefully, realizing she must be Baek Seol's mother. She found her strikingly beautiful, and Baek Seol's little sister looked almost like a doll. The youngest child was incredibly small as well. However, memories of the earlier incident made her uneasy. She hastily made an excuse, claiming she had already eaten at school and would go upstairs instead. Before she could escape, Baek Seol stepped in and suggested they simply grab some ice cream and go outside for a bit. Unable to refuse without appearing rude, she agreed. As they ate ice cream together, she cursed inwardly, wondering how the situation had taken such a strange turn. She noticed Baek Seol watching her closely and felt unsettled. Before she could say anything, he commented casually that he already knew why she was reacting that way. She inwardly scolded herself again, feeling completely exposed. Baek Seol then mentioned she must have heard about him from Seong Shinu. He added that she probably recognized him because of his sharp eyes and implied he recognized her as well. Yeon Yisol froze, her thoughts spiraling. The entire situation suddenly felt frightening, and she questioned whether she might be in danger. Baek Seol broke the tension by revealing he would be transferring to her school the very next day. He added she should take good care of him, mentioning he had heard they would be in the same class, Class 5. He also confirmed Seong Shinu was in Class 6. He started to ask about her relationship with Seong Shinu, but stopped when he noticed how pale she had become. He asked gently why she looked so scared. Her thoughts immediately returned to Seong Shinu's warning, calling Baek Seol a complete psycho and insisting she should run away from him. Baek Seol suddenly knelt down in front of her, and her visible hashtag shifted to scared squirrel. At the same time, she sensed Baek Seol's confusion as he wondered what kind of terrible things Seong Shinu might have said about him to make her this frightened. He questioned whether he had come across as too intimidating, and whether he had scared her from the very beginning. Making eye contact again, Baek Seol explained he had not intended to frighten her at all, and joked that maybe he should have worn something cuter. Watching his thoughts, she slowly realized he did not seem dangerous. Despite his punk-like appearance, he appeared genuinely apologetic for making her uncomfortable. He offered her another ice cream, trying to lighten the mood. Strangely, in that moment, she felt grateful for the wish she had made. Until then, she had always been terrified of speaking to people, constantly worrying about what they were thinking or whether she had said something wrong. That fear had often left her silent. Now, seeing others' thoughts directly brought her an unexpected sense of relief. Suddenly, she started laughing. Baek Seol stared at her in shock and asked why she was laughing all of a sudden. She continued laughing uncontrollably, surprising even herself. Baek Seol looked even more confused, asking what was going on. Despite that, he soon started laughing as well. For a moment, the two of them simply laughed together without reason. An awkward silence followed. Breaking it abruptly, she asked what he thought about Seong Shinu. Baek Seol remarked she seemed much more relaxed now, admitting her earlier fear had scared him too. She blushed at the comment. Baek Seol sat down beside her and mentioned he had noticed earlier how intensely she hated Seong Shinu. The phrase "hated him with passion" stood out clearly. He then shared a thought he had been entertaining. He suggested they could team up and give Seong Shinu some form of payback. Shocked, she questioned what he meant. With a mischievous tone, Baek Seol proposed that she date him for a month. He suggested that together they could strike back and deal Seong Shinu an emotional blow. After hearing Baek Seol's sudden and outrageous proposal, the Yeon Yisol responded as calmly and wisely as she could manage before turning away. However, before she could escape properly, Baek Seol shamelessly grabbed her foot, forcing her to drag him along with her. While being pulled, he began pleading dramatically, begging her to date him for just 1 month. He insisted it would only be pretend and tried his best to persuade her. He claimed he was good-looking, promised to treat her well, and swore he would not do anything strange at school. He emphasized repeatedly that in front of Seong Shinu, they would only hold hands, nothing more. He stressed that it would really be just that. Hearing him ramble so confidently made Yeon Yisol suddenly yell like an irritated child, which surprised even herself. Strangely, that reaction only made Baek Seol like her more. After that outburst, she finally paused and tried to sort through the situation logically. She realized that Baek Seol and Seong Shinu were childhood friends who had despised each other throughout middle school. Knowing this, it became obvious that Baek Seol had transferred to this place for the same reason Seong Shinu once had. Baek Seol wanted her to pretend to date him solely to provoke Seong Shinu and get revenge. However, Yeon Yisol quickly understood something Baek Seol clearly did not. Seong Shinu already despised her. She stopped walking, lowered herself slightly to meet Baek Seol's eyes, and explained honestly that even if she pretended to date him, Seong Shinu would not react at all. She calmly stated that Seong Shinu did not have any lingering feelings for her anymore, not even a trace, and had hated her for quite some time now. Hearing this, Baek Seol froze in shock. Yeon Yisol stood up again and told him he should find another plan. She added that if his new plan genuinely managed to upset Seong Shinu, she would help him then. Feeling embarrassed, she began walking away. Baek Seol remained behind, confused, wondering what exactly was going on. He muttered to himself that there was no way Seong Shinu did not like her anymore, convinced that the psychopath would have clung to her if he had feelings. Suddenly, Baek Seol called out to her from behind and questioned her logic. He asked why she hated Seong Shinu so much if Seong Shinu did not like her anymore. He speculated whether Seong Shinu had clung to her too much and annoyed her. Yeon Yisol stopped, utterly confused by his words. She wondered when Seong Shinu had ever clung to her. She replied firmly that it was not like that at all. Inside her mind, she cursed Seong Shinu for all the trashy things he had done on his own. Being able to see the hashtag directly instead of guessing made everything feel even more absurd. As she stood there fuming, Baek Seol suddenly poked her cheek. While Baek Seol poked her cheek, clearly puzzled about why she hated Seong Shinu so intensely, Yeon Yisol realized she could not say the real reason out loud. When Baek Seol asked what the strange hashtag meant, she finally snapped. She shouted that what irritated her was how Seong Shinu used to be a dumb, messy-haired little runt, yet now walked around wearing a fake nice guy face and acting like a school celebrity. She declared it disgusting and unbearably annoying. Her sudden yelling made Baek Seol burst with excitement. He started dancing around her, clearly thrilled by her honesty. Just like that, without any formal agreement, the so-called Let's Piss Off Seong Shinu Club was unofficially formed. After years of eating alone without caring about her surroundings, the Yeon Yisol had become a master of solitary dining. However, she soon realized that this new situation was pure torture for someone like her. Baek Seol walked with her to school, staying by her side throughout the school tour. Everywhere they went, whispers followed them. Students gossiped endlessly about the new transfer student, Baek Seol, and questioned why he was with the Yeon Yisol. Some claimed Baek Seol was an influencer with millions of followers on Instagram. Baek Seol leaned in and whispered proudly that he was actually a model and asked whether that was cool. Yeon Yisol replied honestly that it was amazing. Meanwhile, the gossip only grew louder. People wondered who she was and why someone like Baek Seol would stay with her. Hearing those whispers made her deeply embarrassed. She felt tempted to walk with her eyes closed, terrified of accidentally seeing everyone's hashtags. Suddenly, Baek Seol called her name. She responded softly, and an awkward silence settled between them. After a moment, she looked at him and reminded him they had agreed not to pretend anything, questioning whether that was still the case. Baek Seol casually replied they were not even holding hands. She then asked why everyone was buzzing around them like that. Baek Seol only laughed and smiled in response. Without warning, Seong Shinu appeared with an enraged expression. He grabbed Baek Seol by the collar and dragged him away. Baek Seol followed calmly, claiming he was just checking some facts and that it was nothing serious. Yeon Yisol stood there in confusion, unsure of what was happening. Around her, students whispered excitedly, saying the new transfer student knew Seong Shinu, the student council president. As Seong Shinu and Yeon Yisol briefly made eye contact, she saw his hashtag clearly. It read, "First Love Who Wants to Dump Baek Seol." Behind the school, Seong Shinu cursed furiously at Baek Seol. Baek Seol responded calmly, greeting him and remarking that it was nice to see he was doing well. Seong Shinu continued cursing, while Baek Seol casually replied that he already knew Seong Shinu did not like him anymore. When Seong Shinu demanded an explanation, Baek Seol snapped back, saying it was disgusting to spout nonsense like that. He accused Seong Shinu of thinking Baek Seol had transferred because of him and clarified that he had moved because his younger sibling wanted to. He added that he hated being stuck in a dump like this place. Seong Shinu retorted that he had known that already and criticized Baek Seol for dragging Yeon Yisol into his childish pranks. Baek Seol smiled and questioned whether Seong Shinu was scared she would hate him even more. He suggested Seong Shinu should behave better and asked what he had done to earn so much hatred. Baek Seol added that since he was already there, he thought he might as well help his love life, but there was nothing left to fix. He confidently stated that Yeon Yisol completely hated Seong Shinu. Hearing this, Seong Shinu looked down in embarrassment. Baek Seol poked him mockingly and asked whether he was crying, claiming it made his brother's heart ache as well. He even took a picture of Seong Shinu, teasing him to keep crying. Enraged, Seong Shinu attacked Baek Seol. Back in the classroom, Yeon Yisol noticed the first period was already over, yet Baek Seol still had not returned. They were supposed to sit next to each other. As she read her book, she recalled Seong Shinu's hashtag. She thought bitterly that the trash had disappeared. She guessed he could not stand seeing her and Baek Seol together. With her new hashtag ability, she already felt slightly more confident. The previous day had been more reassuring than she had expected. Talking felt easier than before. She used to freeze whenever she tried to speak, but now, with this strange power, the long school life ahead felt manageable. The first semester of 10th grade stretched far into the future, but she believed she could handle it better now. Then, Baek Seol stumbled, completely bruised. She immediately asked what had happened to his face. Baek Seol replied cheerfully that he had said something useful to really piss Seong Shinu off and joked that they should just kill him. His hashtag shifted to future murderers. Yeon Yisol realized it was still just rough talk and felt confused. Killing someone was far too extreme. Baek Seol continued joking, suggesting they could drown Seong Shinu since the sea was nearby, which would be perfect. Yeon Yisol firmly replied she did not want to kill anyone. Baek Seol then proposed burying him on the hill behind the school and casually added he had already tried it once and it had not killed him. She was horrified to learn he had actually attempted something like that. At that moment, Yeon Yisol began doubting whether she truly could handle all of this so easily. Meanwhile, behind the school, Seong Shinu sat alone, bruised from the fight, lost deep in his own troubled thoughts. To begin with, Yeon Yisol reminded herself once again of how she had obtained this absurd, almost frightening power. The hashtag ability had been granted because of the countless wishes she had made without even realizing it. The system had chosen her wish and rewarded her with this power. Now, whenever she made eye contact with someone, their thoughts about her appeared as visible hashtags. Even so, she had never imagined, not even once, that a tag filled with envy or complicated emotions would ever be attached to her name. While she was still lost in those thoughts, Baek Seol called out to her. The Yeon Yisol immediately noticed how much attention they were drawing and felt uncomfortable under the constant stares. She suggested they move somewhere more private to talk, and mentioned she would get bandages for his injuries. Baek Seol followed her willingly and explained, in his usual exaggerated manner, that she had done a great job teaming up with him. He cursed Seong Shinu openly, calling him a complete barbarian. According to Baek Seol, all he had done was greet Seong Shinu politely before Seong Shinu suddenly threw the first punch. He complained dramatically about how terrible he was at fighting and claimed that was the reason he himself had ended up so badly injured. As they headed toward the nurse's office, Yeon Yisol thought the teacher might not be there. She also found herself doubting Baek Seol's words. No matter how strange things were, she could not believe Seong Shinu would hit someone so brutally without reason. When she opened the door and asked for bandages, she froze. Seong Shinu was already there, carefully stitching his own bruises. His face was covered in marks, looking far worse than she had expected. With hesitation, she mentioned that the teacher did not seem to be around and added that she needed bandages unconsciously, and realized that Baek Seol had lied. Seong Shinu looked up and asked why she needed bandages, questioning whether she had gotten hurt. She replied quickly that they were for Baek Seol. She repeated his name clearly. Seong Shinu asked again, as if confirming whether the bandages were really for him, and she answered yes. Inside her head, she scolded herself harshly. She wondered why she had said it so honestly, with such a straight face, right in front of Seong Shinu. She cursed her own mouth, thinking that if she was going to be a coward, she should have just stayed quiet and ignored him completely. Before she could escape the awkwardness, Seong Shinu called her name. As Seong Shinu looked at her with a dull, empty expression, something stirred painfully in his chest. She recognized that face. Back in middle school, Seong Shinu cried often. They had hidden together in the library, watching movies whenever they had the chance. She recognized that face. Even the slightest sad scene had been enough to make him quietly sob. The expression on his face now was exactly the same as it had been back then. She herself had never been someone who cried easily. Yet whenever Seong Shinu cried for his own reasons, her eyes had always grown hot as well. Without thinking, she reached out and placed a finger on Seong Shinu's forehead. The action shocked him, and irritation immediately flashed across his face. Yeon Yisol was just as startled by her own behavior and quickly pulled her hand back. She realized she had acted purely out of habit, just like in the past. She questioned herself silently, wondering why she had done something like that now. Seong Shinu looked equally confused. He suddenly asked why she had not been wearing her glasses lately. The question caught her off guard. She wondered why he would notice something like that. Since gaining this ability, her eyesight had improved, and she had simply stopped wearing them. Realizing he had noticed made her feel strangely embarrassed. She decided she should start wearing non-prescription glasses again from the next day. She explained this briefly while gripping her hair tightly. At that moment, she noticed the hashtag hovering over Seong Shinu. It read First Love. She was confused. Where had all the other tags gone? There had been so many before, yet now only that single one remained. The emptiness around it made her chest feel tight in a way she could not explain. Seong Shinu commented casually that she had always complained about hating contact lenses because they were uncomfortable. The sudden softness in his tone irritated her. When he added that it could not be because of Baek Seol, her eyes filled with tears without warning. She looked straight into Seong Shinu's eyes. Seeing her like that seemed to Seong Shinu's eyes. Seeing her like that seemed to shock him, and instantly his hashtag shifted violently. Idiot. Dumb dog. Trash. Overwhelmed, she yelled that she did not know. She grabbed a bandage and pressed it roughly onto Seong Shinu's cheek, snapping that she was simply sick of wearing glasses. She then took the entire box of bandages and ran out. As she fled, she cursed Seong Shinu in her mind, accusing him of being selfish for switching between calling her first love and trash. She thought bitterly that he should just choose one. She questioned what he was really thinking. Seong Shinu remained stunned by her sudden outburst. Meanwhile, Baek Seol sat casually on a bench and called out to Yeon Yisol. As she began bandaging Baek Seol, irritation surged through her again. She hated how easily Seong Shinu still affected her emotions, and the realization angered her deeply. She ended up taking her frustration out on Baek Seol while wrapping the bandages. He complained lightly, saying she could be gentler because it hurt. Inside, she thought she was the one who wanted to cry. She could not understand why Seong Shinu had looked like he was about to cry earlier. When she opened her eyes properly, she noticed how badly Baek Seol was hurt. Instead of getting upset, Baek Seol laughed. He remarked that she had seemed perfectly fine when he first saw her and wondered why she was acting so awkward now. He warned her that if she kept holding everything in, she would end up getting sick. He suggested she let it out, even scream if she wanted. He asked whether Seong Shinu had bothered her again. That question broke her. She started crying uncontrollably and complained about Seong Shinu, admitting she did not understand him at all. She questioned why he refused to say anything and accused him of being selfish. She complained about how he called her trash, then first love, and then switched back again. Baek Seol stopped laughing entirely as he listened. He even cursed Seong Shinu along with her. Baek Seol then mentioned he had once heard someone say that telling another person they needed to fix things was also a form of affection. Hearing that made her heart ache even more. She asked whether that meant her elementary school classmates had hated her so deeply they could not even show that much affection before cutting her off without reason. She did not want to cry like a helpless child, yet with just that small moment of concern, all the sorrow she had bottled up for years burst out like a broken dam. Baek Seol quietly comforted her, saying it seemed she truly hated Seong Shinu. When she looked into Baek Seol's eyes again, she noticed the gentle, almost cute hashtags floating there. Baek Seol then revealed that aside from dating, there was another way to completely mess with Seong Shinu. Curious and exhausted, she asked what it was. Baek Seol explained calmly that people became the angriest when they were betrayed. He proposed that since she and Seong Shinu had once been on good terms, she could pretend to grow close to him again. He proposed that since she and Seong Shinu had once been on good terms, she could pretend to grow close to him again. Then, without giving any reason, she would dump him and disappear completely. Ghost him. He claimed it would leave Seong Shinu confused, frustrated, and miserable. With confidence, Baek Seol declared he had prepared this plan carefully and asked her whether it was not a brilliant idea. Yeon Yisol felt convinced Baek Seol did not even know Seong Shinu hated her, so he probably had no idea how twisted everything had become. While standing there, she briefly wondered why Baek Seol could repeat almost the exact same behavior Seong Shinu once showed her. It made her question whether the minds of those two childhood friends were somehow synced in an unsettling way. As she absentmindedly checked Baek Seol's head, lost in those thoughts, Baek Seol questioned her actions and asked why she was touching him, jokingly wondering whether she had finally decided to date him and suggesting it might solve everything. Yeon Yisol immediately backed away, her thoughts growing even more tangled than before. While Yeon Yisol struggled internally, Baek Seol felt she had acted first, touching him and then behaving like a victim afterward. In his mind, she seemed like someone who knew how to play her cards well. Meanwhile, Yeon Yisol remained deep in thought, recalling how she had randomly gained her strange hashtag power without any warning or preparation. Those thoughts continued to spiral as she tried to understand how everything around her kept turning so absurd. Suddenly, Yeon Yisol began walking again, pulling away from Baek Seol, while he was dragged along and questioned why she was doing this once more. When they reached the classroom, a huge commotion greeted them. A large crowd of students had gathered in front of the door, and Yeon Yisol wondered what could possibly be happening. To her surprise, Seong Shinu stood there, and nearly every girl seemed focused on him. The teacher looked utterly confused and questioned why everyone was crowding around and why Seong Shinu was even present in their class. The teacher immediately thought about Seong Shinu and Baek Seol together and wondered what might have happened between them. She questioned whether the two had gotten into a fight. At the same moment, both Seong Shinu and Baek Seol replied they had rolled down the stairs together, using the exact same excuse at the exact same time. Yeon Yisol felt taken aback, further convinced their minds might truly be synced in some strange way. Seong Shinu then explained the reason for his visit. He revealed the sports festival bracket had been released and instructed the class president to complete the entry list and submit it within a week. He also announced details regarding practice arrangements, explaining the auditorium would be shared by 2 classes at a time. Class 1 would practice with Class 2, 3 with 4, and 5 with 6. Yeon Yisol and Baek Seol belonged to Class 5, while Seong Shinu was in Class 6. The classroom quickly filled with whispers and gossip as everyone speculated they would now have a chance to practice alongside Seong Shinu's class. The excitement among the students grew, especially among those who admired him. After finishing his announcement, Seong Shinu stated he had nothing else to add and then called Yeon Yisol by name, asking whether she could accompany him for a moment since he had a favor to ask regarding the sports festival. Yeon Yisol felt confused, questioning why he would need a favor from her of all people. The teacher then instructed Yeon Yisol to go with Seong Shinu while the rest of the class resumed their lesson and opened their books. As Yeon Yisol stood up, feeling unsettled, she wondered why Seong Shinu would call Yeon Yisol specifically, especially when Seong Shinu had always avoided speaking to her whenever possible. Yeon Yisol also remembered how, even after the incident the other day, Seong Shinu had tried his best to stay away from her. Now, without warning, he was asking for a favor. She recalled how she had been crying because of him not long ago, and now she had to face him again, which felt deeply embarrassing. Just as Yeon Yisol prepared to leave, Baek Seol suddenly held her hand and told her that if Seong Shinu upset her again, she should punch him without hesitation and let him handle the consequences. Yeon Yisol understood his intention and smiled reassuringly at him. Seong Shinu noticed their interaction and watched them quietly. As Yeon Yisol walked alongside Seong Shinu, she reminded herself that whether she liked it or not, seeing Seong Shinu's hashtag only fueled her anger. For now, she decided the simplest solution was to avoid eye contact altogether, believing that approach would work. Upon reaching the student council room, Yeon Yisol entered and sat down on the sofa, realizing it was her first time being there in such a casual manner. Seong Shinu explained the favor was simple. Yeon Yisol asked what he needed from her. He then revealed they planned to open a small study consulting booth during the sports festival and wanted her help with it. Yeon Yisol paused before responding, questioning why he would want her involved in study consulting. Seong Shinu pointed out she had consistently ranked first throughout the entire school. Yeon Yisol immediately refused, explaining she was terrible at teaching others. Seong Shinu admitted he already knew that and shifted his gaze away before sitting down right next to her. He reassured her she would not need to teach anyone directly, as the council members would handle that part. He reassured her she would not need to teach anyone directly, as the council members would handle that part. Her role would simply involve helping them prepare a guide. As he spoke, Seong Shinu suddenly realized how close he was sitting next to her. Startled, he quickly stood up and moved to sit directly in front of her instead, apologizing and explaining he needed to be more careful because he kept forgetting. Yeon Yisol noticed his reaction and realized he had been frightened by how close he had gotten. She questioned what exactly he needed to be careful about and asked what he meant by his words. Seong Shinu appeared confused by her question and asked what she was talking about. At that moment, Yeon Yisol accidentally made eye contact with him and immediately saw his inner thought appear as a hashtag. The single word she saw was trash. Yeon Yisol felt stunned, as she had expected something else, perhaps words like first love or something involving Baek Seol. Seeing only that word made her anger rise sharply. Trying to maintain composure, Yeon Yisol brushed it off outwardly and awkwardly suggested they continue discussing the matter at hand. Seong Shinu resumed speaking, explaining that if she agreed to help, she would need to come to the council room every day to assist with preparations. Yeon Yisol's irritation finally boiled over. She grabbed a tissue paper and threw it at Seong Shinu's forehead in frustration. Inwardly, Yeon Yisol reflected on how she must have made the wrong wish. Instead of being hurt by harsh truths, she felt she should have wished for ears capable of hearing every detail. Those small, bite-sized hashtags felt like infuriating puzzles, and she realized she already struggled with managing her anger. As the reality of her behavior sank in, she felt shocked at herself for losing control so easily. Seong Shinu broke the silence by asking whether he had messed up again. Meanwhile, Yeon Yisol remembered Baek Seol's promise to take responsibility if she punched Seong Shinu, and she wished he were there to help her now. Back in the classroom, Baek Seol slept peacefully while the girl students around him whispered about how handsome he was, lamenting they could not even touch him. They asked the teacher to wake him, and even the teacher appeared irritated by his carefree attitude. At the same time, Yeon Yisol remained alone with Seong Shinu inside the student council president's room, feeling increasingly overwhelmed. Unable to handle the situation any longer, she silently called out for Baek Seol, hoping he would somehow come to her rescue. Yeon Yisol apologized for her earlier behavior, her voice quiet and restrained. Seong Shinu responded by pointing out how she had dragged him out, despite refusing to even look him in the eyes now. He added she only seemed to feel guilty because she had been close to Baek Seol. He asked whether that was all there was to it. Yeon Yisol felt confused by his words, unsure how he had reached such a conclusion. Seong Shinu then picked up the tissue paper she had thrown earlier and commented casually that she had good aim. He remarked that if Baek Seol kept bugging her, she should simply grab anything nearby and throw it at him the same way. As he spoke, he crushed the tissue paper effortlessly in his hand and tossed it aside. Immediately afterward, he apologized for his behavior, his tone calmer than before. Yeon Yisol trembled slightly, though she reassured herself internally that everything was fine. Seong Shinu then suggested they continue discussing the sports festival preparations, and Yeon Yisol agreed without hesitation. Just as they prepared to move on, Seong Shinu glared at her sharply and asked whether he could ask her one more thing before they returned. Yeon Yisol agreed, though she felt a strange tension building inside her. Internally, Yeon Yisol wondered what he could possibly ask now. A dark joke crossed her mind, questioning whether he would ask something outrageous or threatening. Instead, Seong Shinu asked whether she was truly comfortable being touched by Baek Seol. He commented that Baek Seol might look harmless and soft, but appearances could be deceiving, and having long hair did not change the fact he was still a guy. Yeon Yisol felt baffled by the question, thinking she was well aware of that already. Seong Shinu then added that whenever he touched her, she reacted strongly, almost panicking, and he questioned why Baek Seol was any different. Yeon Yisol felt her thoughts spiral as she tried to recall such moments. She questioned when she had ever reacted like that, and wondered what he was even referring to. Seong Shinu pointed out she had known Baek Seol for only 2 days, and yet had already been the one tending to his wounds and placing bandages on him. In response, Yeon Yisol grabbed Seong Shinu's hand firmly and stated she had never panicked when he touched her, not even once. Seong Shinu felt a visible sense of relief and smiled faintly, asking whether that was truly the case. He then held her hand and warned her that if she kept wavering back and forth, she would only confuse herself further. As he called her name, Yeon Yisol noticed his hashtag change. Where it had once read, trash, it now displayed, damn first love. The shift stunned her. She realized his thoughts about her had changed drastically in such a short time, and she could not understand why. Yeon Yisol wondered why those strange and uncomfortable tags kept appearing. She did not feel bad at that moment, partly because Seong Shinu appeared far more anxious than she was. She told Seong Shinu to loosen his grip, explaining he was hurting her. Instead of letting go immediately, Seong Shinu examined the palm of her hand himself, commenting on how soft it felt. Yeon Yisol questioned what he was doing and why he was behaving that way. Seong Shinu replied that she had said she would not panic anymore, so he would simply let go whenever she felt ready. Yeon Yisol fell silent, observing him closely and realizing how cautious he had become. He did not resemble the boy she remembered from middle school. Back then, he would jump nervously if their shoulders brushed during a movie. She wondered when he had grown so different. Seong Shinu noticed Yeon Yisol blushing and shifted the topic back to the sports festival. He explained the student council planned to set up a consulting booth and wanted her to prepare a guide for it. Yeon Yisol agreed quietly. Seong Shinu then explained the requirements for the guide and mentioned they could work on it together during lunch breaks in the council room. Yeon Yisol's thoughts drifted again. She noticed how warm his hand felt and questioned whether that sensation was normal. She asked whether she would be working alone or alongside someone else. Feeling how big his palm was, she wondered whether she should let go and how she could do so without making things awkward. She also realized how much larger his hand was compared to hers, and questioned how she could even pull away smoothly. Suddenly, Seong Shinu tightened his grip slightly and stated they would work together, just the two of them in that room. He added that if she disliked it, she could say so directly while holding his hand. Yeon Yisol replied honestly that she did not hate the idea. She then gently pulled her hand free and moved toward the door. Seong Shinu informed her they would start the next day during lunch. Yeon Yisol, already rushing out, replied she would come by tomorrow and explained she had missed too much of her class already. She left the room completely flushed, her face burning with embarrassment. Throughout the rest of the class, Yeon Yisol remained distracted, replaying everything that had happened. Her mind felt blank, as though it refused to process the events properly. Suddenly, Baek Seol leaned close and called her by a teasing nickname, commenting she looked completely worn out. He then lowered his voice and whispered into her ear. Startled, Yeon Yisol jumped up and claimed school was already over. She complained his voice had been too low and overwhelming. Baek Seol laughed and asked whether she had found it sexy. Yeon Yisol ignored his comment as they walked home together. She questioned her own behavior internally, realizing how strange and suspicious she had been acting. Baek Seol confronted Yeon Yisol directly and asked whether something had already happened between her and Seong Shinu. Baek Seol reminded her they had formed a Screw Seong Shinu Over alliance just 2 days ago and told her she should not abandon it so easily. Yeon Yisol replied firmly that she was not betraying anything. Yeon Yisol reflected on how she and Seong Shinu had barely spoken properly until that day. She wondered whether betraying their mission would make her seem too easy for Seong Shinu. She voiced those thoughts aloud. Baek Seol praised her for making a smart decision. Yeon Yisol admitted everything since that night had been stressful because she had suffered due to Seong Shinu. Baek Seol agreed and encouraged her. Yeon Yisol added she hated people without loyalty more than anything else. Fueled by emotion, they both shouted their convictions toward the seaside, declaring betrayal had no place in their lives. They yelled together, and Baek Seol loudly proclaimed Yeon Yisol was amazing. Yeon Yisol found herself enjoying his compliment more than she expected. As they headed home after stopping by the park for ice cream, Baek Seol casually asked whether it had been her first time doing something bad, or whether she had messed around before. Yeon Yisol admitted it was her first time. Baek Seol responded he had guessed as much. He then suggested that whether it involved dating or taking revenge on Seong Shinu, perhaps the grudge had been too heavy from the beginning. He proposed starting with something light-hearted instead. Next, the frog jumped out of Seong Shinu's locker while Baek Seol and Yeon Yisol were seeing all of this through the window. Yeon Yisol asked what he meant. Baek Seol suggested placing a frog inside Seong Shinu's locker so it would jump out at him when he opened it. He explained Seong Shinu was terrified of frogs and would likely panic and fall over. Then Baek Seol grabbed Yeon Yisol's hand and ran away laughing. The next morning, Yeon Yisol spent nearly 20 minutes right after entering the school wandering around with Baek Seol in search of a frog. After several failed attempts and unnecessary detours, they finally managed to catch one. Then, another 5 full minutes slipped as they had placed the frog carefully inside Seong Shinu's locker, with Baek Seol acting far too proud of himself for such a deed. When Seong Shinu eventually opened his locker, it took no more than 20 seconds for the realization to hit him. His face drained of color, his body stiffened, and he collapsed onto the ground in pure shock. The silence lasted barely 5 seconds before Seong Shinu reacted, grabbing a mop and ramming it straight into Baek Seol's face without hesitation. The sudden violence startled nearby students, though none dared intervene. Baek Seol immediately lost his temper and demanded to know whether Seong Shinu had lost his mind, questioning how anyone could think of using a mop as a weapon. Seong Shinu fired back without missing a beat, remarking sarcastically about who truly lacked common sense. It was only then Seong Shinu noticed Yeon Yisol standing nearby, quietly observing the chaos unfold. He realized he could no longer ignore her presence, especially since Yeon Yisol's ability allowed her to see their thoughts clearly. Seong Shinu's hashtag appeared vividly in her mind, tangled with memories of his first love and a sense of tragic irony. Baek Seol's hashtag followed soon after, painting him as an unfortunate rice cake caught in the hands of an idiot. Seeing those thoughts made Yeon Yisol feel it was finally time to ask what had gone so terribly wrong between two childhood friends who now seemed incapable of existing peacefully near each other. She decided silence would only make matters worse. The three of them moved to sit down, though the arrangement immediately felt awkward. Seong Shinu and Baek Seol took opposite ends while Yeon Yisol sat on a nearby bench, watching them cautiously. She could not help thinking about how strange the formation looked, especially considering how different things had been just 5 minutes earlier. Baek Seol broke the silence by asking what Yeon Yisol meant by her question. He wondered why she believed they were fighting so much and suggested she should ask Seong Shinu instead, pointing out Seong Shinu had already shared parts of the story while skipping the most important reason. Seong Shinu responded sharply, blaming everything on Baek Seol and calling him the root of all problems. Yeon Yisol looked at both of them with a gentle smile and suggested they should calm down and talk together properly. Seong Shinu pointed out the obvious issue with seating, stating Yeon Yisol would be squeezed if both of them sat close. Baek Seol replied casually, saying he already knew and planned to be the only one sitting while Seong Shinu stood. Before Baek Seol could enjoy his victory, Yeon Yisol grabbed his head and pushed him down, firmly suggesting both of them stand instead. Baek Seol complained about his neck hurting, leaving Yeon Yisol puzzled by his dramatic reaction. Returning to the main issue, Yeon Yisol asked when their first fight had happened. Baek Seol recalled it might have been in 1st grade, though Seong Shinu quickly corrected him, insisting it happened in 3rd grade. As the story unfolded, Yeon Yisol learned they had been born next to each other and naturally grew close. However, a heated argument during 3rd grade, combined with both of them already being sensitive due to their family situations, led to a standoff. Each demanded an apology from the other, and neither was willing to give in. The fight never truly ended and simply continued over the years. Yeon Yisol felt genuinely puzzled hearing such a reason. The entire conflict seemed rooted in something childish. Both Seong Shinu and Baek Seol agreed it sounded ridiculous when explained so simply. Yeon Yisol admitted she expected something far heavier and suggested they should apologize at the same time to finally put an end to it. Baek Seol immediately objected, insisting Seong Shinu should apologize first. He recalled being called a worthless thug who deserved to be erased from the family registry and stabbed in a valley. Seong Shinu dismissed the claim as exaggerated nonsense and warned Yeon Yisol not to listen, describing it as Baek Seol's special talent for twisting stories. Seong Shinu countered by saying Baek Seol should go first, reminding him of being compared to his strict stalker father and told he would die the same way. Baek Seol accused Seong Shinu of sneaking into his house at dawn and smashing his bicycle, recalling how devastated he felt after saving money for 3 years to buy it. Seong Shinu scoffed and pointed out Baek Seol once shoved his bike off a mountain so violently. Its parts were never recovered, questioning why he even bought a bike during elementary school. The argument escalated rapidly. Baek Seol grabbed Seong Shinu by the collar and shouted about wanting to go on runs together, explaining that was the reason behind buying the bike. He accused Seong Shinu of forgetting how he had been pushed down a mountain, resulting in broken limbs. Yeon Yisol stood frozen, shocked by the severity of their memories. Seong Shinu retaliated by grabbing Baek Seol's head and reminding him of being struck struck with a basketball right after being discharged from the hospital. He muttered his regret about agreeing to settle things at all. The confession only deepened Yeon Yisol's shock. Baek Seol responded quietly but firmly, saying he had agreed to settle as well, yet memories of being tied up and buried in the back mountains still made him tremble. Seong Shinu replied coldly, pointing out Baek Seol was not innocent either, and remarking he should have buried his face too. As Seong Shinu looked toward Yeon Yisol, both boys finally noticed her expression, wide-eyed and speechless, reflecting the weight of everything she had just heard. Baek Seol eventually spoke up and asked whether they had said too much. Even Seong Shinu appeared visibly embarrassed by how far the conversation had gone. Sensing the awkward tension, Baek Seol tried to lighten the mood by claiming they had only been joking around and insisted they were not the kind of people who enjoyed violence. He nudged Seong Shinu lightly and asked him to confirm it. Seong Shinu quickly agreed, nodding and saying it was true, adding he genuinely meant it from the bottom of his heart. Just then, the bell rang through the hallway. Yeon Yisol began to move away without hesitation. Seong Shinu attempted to stop her, but Yeon Yisol calmly replied she had already understood the situation well enough. She suggested they avoid fighting for the day and simply head to class. She added, almost casually, she was an honorable student who never skipped class, so she would be going first. Both Seong Shinu and Baek Seol stood frozen, shocked by her reaction and trying to process what exactly she had taken from everything they shared. Only then did it sink in for both of them they had unintentionally revealed every embarrassing childhood conflict to Yeon Yisol. A sense of unease crept over them as they wondered what she might now think of the two of them. Meanwhile, Yeon Yisol walked back to class with her thoughts occupied. Along with learning the long history between Baek Seol and Seong Shinu, she realized something new about her ability. When too many thoughts surfaced at once, multiple hashtags appeared together, overlapping in confusing ways. While Yeon Yisol focused on that discovery, Baek Seol sat quietly, troubled by his own thoughts. He worried she might be losing affection for him and feared she could even be preparing to leave him. Concerns about her loyalty swirled in his mind uncontrollably. Yeon Yisol, noticing the hashtags without even turning around, calmly responded to him. She made it clear she was not abandoning him and had not lost any affection. She added she was not even surprised by what she heard and told him to pay attention to class instead of overthinking. Baek Seol protested softly, saying he had not spoken a single word aloud. At that moment, the teacher scolded the class, demanding to know who was talking during the lesson. Yeon Yisol realized once again she was the only one capable of seeing the hashtags floating invisibly above everyone's thoughts. She quietly wrote down her notes while Baek Seol soon drifted off to sleep beside her. During lunchtime, Yeon Yisol entered the student council room and immediately noticed Seong Shinu's tense expression. She wondered why he looked so worried, especially since she had not been deeply shocked by the earlier revelations. She questioned whether she had failed to control her expression back then. Seong Shinu gestured for her to sit, and Yeon Yisol sensed he was deliberately trying to act normal. As she took a seat, Yeon Yisol found herself thinking about both of them. She wondered what was wrong with those two and questioned whether she had overheard something she was not meant to hear. While their intense fight surprised her, it was not enough to warrant such heavy concern. She did not see herself as some fragile greenhouse flower incapable of handling harsh truths. From her perspective, such experiences, though extreme, were not unheard of. Yeon Yisol then spoke up and addressed Seong Shinu directly. She explained her older brother used to be involved with gangs, which clearly surprised Seong Shinu. She continued by saying they lived near the sea, where there were countless places to ride bikes. Her brother got into fights almost every day, and hospital visits became routine for him. He often passed out in dangerous neighborhoods after brawls, and she had dragged him home more times than she could count. Even at the age of 6, she remembered shouting at gang members in hospital hallways whenever fights broke out. Taking her brother to the hospital became a normal part of her childhood. What Yeon Yisol was trying to convey was simple. From her point of view, their past, no matter how violent it sounded, did not need to become a bigger issue than it already was. She believed making a fuss would solve nothing and hoped they could simply learn to get along moving forward. Hearing her explanation, Yeon Yisol questioned how they were supposed to work separately like that. Seong Shinu responded with a quiet agreement, saying she was right. Yeon Yisol realized then that she was not the only one who worried unnecessarily. Seong Shinu carried his own share of concerns as well. Without realizing it, a small laugh escaped Yeon Yisol's lips. As she and Seong Shinu continued discussing everything calmly, she could not help thinking about how foolish both Baek Seol and Seong Shinu truly were in their own ways. The next day, Yeon Yisol found herself drifting into a strange dream, one tangled with memories from middle school. In it, Seong Shinu complained his uniform no longer fit him properly. She remembered how she had once warned him not to grow any taller, only for him. In the same memory, he asked whether he could cut his hair a little shorter. She recalled telling him not to trim it too much, explaining she liked the way his eyes were visible only when standing close to him. Despite all her instructions, Seong Shinu questioned how long she planned to keep controlling him and bluntly called her terrible. Hearing those words left her irritated. Yeon Yisol realized she was lying on her bed, with Hyul resting lightly above her. She thought bitterly about how cruel Seong Shinu could be, noting he seemed capable of speaking harshly to her even in her dreams. That realization pushed her to admit she had been slacking off lately. In a strange way, the dream felt perfectly timed, reminding her she needed to refocus and get back on track. More importantly, it strengthened her resolve to mess with Seong Shinu alongside Baek Seol. Later, she discussed her idea with Baek Seol. He immediately protested, saying the plan sounded far too intense, though he admitted it fit her personality well, especially considering her background from a biker family. Yeon Yisol leaned closer and whispered her idea into Baek Seol's ear, outlining exactly how she intended to get under Seong Shinu's skin. Baek Seol listened carefully, then asked whether she truly planned to trick Seong Shinu. Yeon Yisol did not answer directly, though her silence said enough. As days passed, Yeon Yisol noticed something unsettling. Between her duties as a guide during lunch, overlapping sports day practices with Seong Shinu's class, and random encounters in hallways and the cafeteria, she kept running into Seong Shinu far more often than before. The real problem lay within her. Even when she tried to focus back on messing up Seong Shinu through middle school memories, one subtle expression from Seong Shinu or a random thought was enough to flood her vision with hashtags. It reminded her of middle school, when she used to get overwhelmed so easily. She knew letting things continue this way would only make matters worse. Baek Seol suggested a simple approach. Once a decision was made, it was better to act quickly and decisively. One solid attempt would be enough. Yeon Yisol considered his words carefully and eventually settled on what she believed to be a clever strategy. She planned to put their reconnection on hold, then suddenly plunge forward before cutting everything off at once. He compared her to a planner agent who carefully set things in motion and monitored routines. Half-jokingly, he asked whether she wanted him to act as the manager who oversaw everything on site. He then laid out the plan clearly. Yeon Yisol would approach Seong Shinu naturally again, act as if things were normal, and at a decisive moment, cut off all contact completely, as though nothing had ever existed between them. Like eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, frustration would meet frustration, and the scales would balance. Then, Yeon Yisol went to the student council room where she found Seong Shinu sleeping. She enters the room without making any noise. Even though Baek Seol spoke confidently, doubt crept into Yeon Yisol's thoughts. She wondered whether Seong Shinu would suffer if she suddenly disappeared, just as she once had. The thought lingered heavily, and before she realized it, sleep claimed her. When Seong Shinu woke up, he was groggy and confused, stirred nearby and wondered what time it was. Only then did he notice Yeon Yisol sleeping beside him along his side. He quietly closed the nearby window, thinking she had been supposed to wake him when she arrived. As he looked closer, he noticed her lenses and assumed her self-imposed challenge must have ended. He suspected she had been watching him frequently lately. Despite everything, Seong Shinu thought she should endure things a little longer, even if she hated it. As long as she could properly distance himself from Baek Seol, he would not approach her again. Lost in thought, he reached out and gently placed his hand against Yeon Yisol's cheek. At that moment, Yeon Yisol began to wake. Still half asleep, she muttered that she had warned him not to bother her while she slept. Confused by the warmth against her face, she assumed it was Ji-Yul's finger. Without fully thinking, she bit down hard. Seong Shinu froze in shock, wondering what kind of perverted situation he had stumbled into. Yeon Yisol jolted awake completely and screamed. The scene looked far too suspicious, and Seong Shinu felt horrified, imagining how it might appear to anyone else. Yeon Yisol quickly apologized, explaining she had younger siblings who often disturbed her sleep. She admitted biting fingers had become a bad habit. She insisted she was not a pervert and claimed she was actually a good person. In her panic, she even added he could bite her finger too if he wanted. The words left her mouth before she could stop them, and Seong Shinu stood there wondering what exactly was happening. Trying to recover, Yeon Yisol suggested they forget everything that had just occurred and start over from the beginning. The moment the words left her, she realized how awful they sounded. She thought she might get reported at this rate. To her surprise, Seong Shinu suddenly took her finger and bit it gently. Her vision immediately filled with a familiar hashtag related to first love, now mixed with something far messier. Seong Shinu calmly said he would do exactly as she suggested. They would pretend nothing had happened. Later that night, Yeon Yisol found herself tugging roughly at Baek Seol's hair while venting her frustration. Baek Seol laughed, commenting she finally seemed comfortable enough with him to act that way. Yeon Yisol's thoughts, however, were far from calm. She realized the real issue was not whether Seong Shinu would be hurt by being ignored. The real problem was whether she could even reconnect with him properly at all. After the way she had messed things up earlier, she feared everything was already ruined. Unable to hold it in any longer, Yeon Yisol told Baek Seol she could not go through with the plan. Baek Seol stopped and asked why she would suddenly say something like that. Instead of answering, Yeon Yisol turned and ran, repeating she could not do it and never would. Baek Seol chased after her, insisting she could succeed and reminding her they could trick Seong Shinu together. Yeon Yisol shouted back that she truly could not, even as Baek Seol laughed lightly and tried to comfort her, assuring her she could handle it. Yeon Yisol shouted back that she truly could not, even as Baek Seol laughed lightly and tried to comfort her, assuring her she could handle it. Yeon Yisol felt her resolve crumble.